What we recognize with injury prevention is that we don't want to place any child or any family in a cocoon. Injury prevention is really not about staying still. It's really about recognizing ways to be safe in the variety of activities that you participate in.
A bicycle is probably the most dangerous toy that we give our kids. We see more bicycle-related injuries than any other single product-related injury in our emergency department.
The important point is that about 85% of all head injuries that occur on bikes could have been prevented by the use of a bike helmet.
Unfortunately, the largest group of kids that we see admitted with bicycle-related injuries are sort of in the 10 to 14-year-old age group, and this age group sometimes is the one that's the hardest to reach regarding bicycle helmets, because they just don't seem cool.
You know, so much of what injury prevention is that we say to families is just say no. But this is one in which we say just say yes. When your child says, "Mommy, do I have to wear my bike helmet?" the answer is always yes.
Bike helmets obviously not only have to be worn, but they have to fit appropriately. And as your child grows, you're going to need to check and make sure that the helmet that they had last year is still the appropriate sized helmet for this year.
And also, I think it's best that your kids, if they're going to ride, that they ride with a buddy. If you can't be with them as a parent, they should be with someone else. We have seen a marked increase in the number of ATV injuries. Our numbers have tripled over that period of time from 1998 to 2005, and we don't see any relief from the frequency of injury-related death and disability that occur from these machines.
We worry particularly about kids less than 16 driving, especially adult ATVs. They don't have the strength to handle the machine. They don't necessarily have the cognitive ability to really understand what the machine is going to do, and so they don't have the forethought to avoid dangerous situations, and they can become quite severely injured.
In the event that parents, adults elect their children to ride them, then the children should be adequately supervised. They should be instructed on how to use the ATV.
They need to be appropriately outfitted in protective equipment, including a helmet. This isn't a bicycle helmet. We're talking about a motorcycle helmet, a real protective helmet, and appropriate clothes, sort of like if you were riding a motorcycle. So you want long pants, long sleeves, gloves, to protect the extremities, at least protect them somewhat.
The other thing is that as a part of the instruction, you know, they shouldn't double up, so only one person on an ATV at a time. I'm really the Grinch that stole Christmas relative to this. These aren't designed for children, so my message is that children should not be riding them.
We strongly recommend that if you have guns, that you take care of them appropriately, that you store guns and ammunition in separate locations, that there are trigger locks on the gun so that the gun can't accidentally go off.
A loaded gun stored in a home with a child is a recipe for potential devastation.
Aside from your average dime store squirt gun, my feeling is that no gun is a toy. That the BB gun still can have a projectile that comes out, can go quickly. If that projectile ends up going into the eye, for example, a child can lose an eye. If it ends up in the chest, you can end up with serious chest injuries.
At the very young ages, the safest use of a gun is to stay away. And the child should be instructed if they're at a friend's house and they see a gun, then they should go to an adult and to instruct that adult that a gun is visible. If they have friends playing with the gun, then they should leave that environment.
Well, first of all, motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death in teenagers. That's indisputable. And teenagers are the population that is the least likely to use passenger safety restraints.
We encourage families to make sure that before taking off on the trip, even if it's down the block, down the street, only a short distance, that everyone be secured properly.
If you're a parent, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, then you can be pretty much guaranteed your teenager isn't wearing theirs. So parents, please buckle up every time you get into the car. And remind your teens when they're at the point where they're able to drive, they don't get the car keys unless they are buckled.
We certainly find that the more people in the car when there's a teenager driving increases the likelihood of accidents. The use of alcohol or any intoxicants should be clearly emphasized. I mean, it's against the law, but that should be emphasized by parents. Also limiting children, teenagers driving at night, when we find the vast majority of accidents occur during that period of time.
Teens like to experiment with lots of stuff, and as much as we don't like to admit it, alcohol is one of the things that teens will experiment with. As parents, this is probably one of the most frightening things that we can think of, is kids going off to a party and then drinking too much, and what happens to them.
It begins to shut down the brain function, and as a result of slowing the metabolism, the heart rate slows, the breathing slows, the stomach does not empty as rapidly.
Try to have as open a relationship with your teenage children as you can, so that they feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about what they're doing or what their friends are doing. And sometimes, if it's in the context of what their friends are doing, you have time to make an intervention, because they may be giving you a subtle message that this is something that they're thinking about doing as well.
But I think this is an underappreciated problem in many ways. It is not funny. It is deadly serious, and it is also not always a rite of passage, as many of us see. To tie one on is not the type of thing that is manly or womanly, or is what allows us to go from being children to young adults. It is something that has dangerous consequences. You know, about 500,000 children use these type of inhalants across the United States every month. Gasoline, spray paint, glue, sometimes even hairspray.
The effects may last for several hours. The kid may look drunk or just act silly or different.
It may slow the heart rate, decrease brain activity over the short term, and have long-term impairments on brain function over a longer term, leading to decreases in IQ, and may ultimately result in slowing of the heart rate and even death. There's something that's been characterized as sudden sniffer's death, SSD, that occurs, and it can occur with a single exposure to huffing.
If you suspect that your child may be using inhalants, you start to see sores on their nose, or they have a persistently kind of runny nose, or have developed allergies that they never had before, then talk with your pediatrician, your local poison control center, because again, this is not a benign problem. This is something that has significant, potentially long-term effects. Again, the sudden cardiac death is the most deadly, but there are concerns about injury with chronic inhalant use to the brain.
Suicide is one of those things that we often don't like to think about. Death and injury of a child as a result of an accident or of a motor vehicle crash are sometimes a lot easier to fathom than a child taking their own life. But over the last 25 years, the numbers of children who commit suicide have tripled. And I'm not sure we're fully aware of all the reasons that has occurred.
I think the first thing that parents can do is to really pay attention and stay connected with their teens, to develop those open communications so that their teen feels comfortable coming to them. Sometimes that doesn't, you can't do that, and you need to look at the subtler signs. As your straight A students suddenly start getting D's, or even C's, or maybe even B's, but a change in school performance that suggests that something is going on. Are they just withdrawing? They don't do the things that they like to do anymore. It used to be that there was something that you knew that your kid was going to be excited about doing, and now they just don't want to do it, just want to stay home, just want to stay behind a closed door and not come out of their bedroom. Those are things to worry about, that may be a warning sign.
I think that we all recognize that these are difficult and challenging times. There are images on TV that set very high expectations of children for how they should look, how they should perform athletically, how they should perform interpersonally. And these high standards are difficult for even those of us who may be more grounded as adults to achieve. So that I think that helping to eliminate stress in your child's environment is one of the first measures that may be useful in helping to prevent this devastating problem.
We like to stay away from that word accident, because an accident's like one of those things that just happens. It happens out of the blue. There's nothing we can do about it. We're powerless. Whereas an injury is something that we can do something to prevent. We can take the steps to make our kids safer, to make our kids safe, but also to have fun. And that's what our goal is, to give parents the tools to keep their kids safe, to allow their kids to be able to grow, explore, and do all the fun things that kids should do, but also not have to be hurt. Being happy and healthy through the entire course of childhood and never having to see the inside of an emergency room should be the goal of all parents, and our job is to give parents and kids the skills that they need to be able to do that.